Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Mindset Season 2. I'm very excited to be joined with some of the members of HCD today. We are going to be talking to the analytics group, which is very exciting. They help us out a lot in the whole research design process and the research implementation. They're really there through the whole stages of the research experience. So we're going to be diving in with them about exactly what their roles are, how they go about their roles. And without further ado, I want to get us started. So unfortunately, Michelle is not with us today, but I am Kathryn Ambroze, the Manager of Behavioral and Marketing Sciences with HCD Research. I am thrilled to be here with, like I was saying, with the analytics team, but I just want to thank everybody for coming back and joining us. If you're new to the vidcast, welcome to Mindset. If you're a returning friend, welcome again. It's nice to see you. So just quickly, a little bit about HCD before we hop into our discussions. HCD is a research house and it provides information on consumers by looking at how they perceive, evaluate, and respond to different types of stimuli, such as products, communications, or just the general consumer experience. We use a combination of different tools that we like to call applied consumer neuroscience, which actually involves different things from psychology to physiology to even including traditional market research methods. And with this, we're able to look at a bunch of different stimuli that can range from early stages of exploration to final product validation. And what's really great about these methodologies is that you can be really anywhere in the world. I know that I've mentioned that I was in the UK recently helping our company do a little bit of research there. And it's really awesome that we do have this lab in a bag that we can just pack up and go wherever the research needs us. But today we're going to be discussing a really cool part of the research experience with our analytics team. So without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. It is Rachel and Carolyn. Welcome to the Mindset vidcasts.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to start off with Rachel. Rachel, do you want to share a little bit of information about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Rachel. I'm a market research manager at HCD. I started with HCD about 2 years ago, back in 2018. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a graduate from the College of New Jersey, and my degree is in psychology. And a lot of my background there consisted of psychology research. And I was really interested in HCD because I've always been really interested in how you can apply psychology principles in real life and to things like business and marketing and consumer behavior in general. So that really drew me to HCD and to my current role as a market research manager.
Oh, that's awesome. So what kind of psychology research, did you do research in a lab when you were in undergrad or?
Yeah, I was involved in a few different labs. So one of them was on memory and aging. One of them was on testing and measurement. So we were working to develop a test in order to predict success in college students. So trying to understand what kinds of things predict, what kinds of behaviors and backgrounds predict future success in college. I also did a honors thesis on the effect of calorie labeling on menus and whether essentially that leads people to consume less calories if they are seeing that information provided ahead of time on the menu.
So do you think that you were introduced to any of the same tools or methodologies that HCD employs, or was that something that you learned on the job?
Some of it is things that I had studied in college. So especially the implicit association testing that we do, I learned about kind of from the theoretical perspective and thinking about different types of biases that people have. I specifically learned about it in a social psychology class, and we were looking at bias in terms of race, whereas the way that we use it at HCD is definitely much different from that, but the same kinds of principles that I learned in that class kind of applied to what we're doing here. So I would say definitely the implicit association testing is something that I had studied in college. The biometrics and physiology that we do, I wasn't as involved with kind of the neuroscience aspect of psychology, so that I was kind of learning a bit more on the job, so not necessarily something that I had studied before.
Yeah, I realized that a lot of my undergraduate experience was theoretical, and I was also in a research lab, and that's where I was able to actually apply it, but not to the same extent nearly as what it's like when we're actually in the field working on it. And I do think that when you go from theory to actually like applying it, there's a real like teachable moment there that lets you to fully understand how it's working when you're seeing it in action. And the whole idea of just getting underneath the car hood and seeing how all of the mechanics of everything work is really, really exciting. But let's hop over to Carolyn. Carolyn, I know you're also a graduate of TCNJ. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I graduated from TCNJ in 2018. Can't believe that was almost 3 years ago already, but that's what it is. I was actually a business major there, so I had a specialization in marketing with a minor in management. I kind of got into market research, going into college with this idea of, being involved in marketing in some form, just not really knowing what type of marketing or, what branch I was most interested in. So similar to Rachel, I believe kind of taking a consumer behavior class kind of piqued my interest and kind of got my antenna going a little bit there. So once I took that kind of initial consumer behavior class, I was really intrigued in that and kind of how, the behaviors, can drive, purchasing and, impact, your shopping behaviors and all that jazz just as a consumer in general. So, going from taking the consumer behavior course, from there, I decided to kind of focus in, and I really was interested in the market research industry. So, through TCNJ, I was able to have multiple market research internships. So when I took my market research class, my senior year, HCD presents during that class, as I, do now as part of my job, which is really just great, kind of seeing it come full circle. But yeah, I know, it's just so funny. So anyway, HCD had presented to my market research class my senior year, and at that point, I had done internships within market research, but not, anything with neuroscience or something down that route specifically, more just general traditional market research. So when they spoke to me in class, they came in, I was really excited to hear that this is an option because I knew I wanted to do market research. I just wasn't sure what type I was most interested in, whether it be tech, qual, quant. But then when I saw neuroscience, it just kind of clicked for me, and seeing HCD, I just really felt at home when they were speaking to, how passionate they are about the research that they were doing. So of course I jumped on that bandwagon right away. I got an internship with them. So I did that my senior year through the spring, and then I transitioned to full-time afterwards. So I've been with HCD for about 3.5 years now.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yes, full time, right after graduation. So can't believe time goes so fast.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it's great too, because, I feel like HCD, we work really well. We have such great open communication, which is something that I was really valuing and looking for in like a smaller work environment with, market research. There are a lot of large companies. So a smaller company was something that I valued, and I only, chose to take internships at small boutique firms just because that I like that environment. And I love how HCD, we're so close. I really do miss our,
hangouts.
Yeah, our hangouts, our holiday shenanigans that we do in the office, our best donut competition, bringing in from, across the state or out of state, so I love that foodie vibe that we have in the office. And, we're still sharing our recipes virtually, which is great.
That's true.
That's just a little bit about me.
And Carolyn, I'm curious, was there any classes in particular that really struck you to say, okay, I want to follow a career in market research?
Yeah, so I think the consumer behavior definitely got my antenna going. And then, I did take market research after the fact, but there's also a marketing analysis class with one of my favorite professors from TCNJ. So of course I had a eye on that class, and I was really interested in it. So after consumer behavior, that kind of opened my horizons. And then I took the marketing analysis class, and it kind of involved more of, the numbers, stats and stuff like that. So once I kind of had both sides and I kind of saw the full picture of market research through class, it all clicked together, and then I pursued market research itself. And I was just really intrigued with how the mind works, and just understanding at a deeper level, marketing and the implications it can have on consumers.
Absolutely. And I find it really interesting that you both were interns. When you started out as an intern, what was the type of roles that they gave you to introduce you to actually applying market research, the theories that you've learned from market research into actual use?
Yeah, so at HCD, they did a really great job. I was actually, under the watchful eye of the analytics department. So I worked closely with Amanda Golod, the current director now. So I basically feel like I was shadowing her for a good portion. So of course, the internship was a really great opportunity to learn the basics. So, in my market research classes, with marketing analysis, we learned some SPSS, and, we would do like kind of mock survey running and analysis and things on that end. But I think HCD did a really great job of really letting me dive into the data and just taking a look for myself and kind of learning on my own terms and deciding where I felt comfortable and where I was interested in learning first. So I got to not only be shadowing and seeing the client side of things with Amanda specifically, but I also got to explore all these new measures. So I did, have some things from class that I was applying, but all these new measures like the biometrics, eye tracking, those were all completely new. So it was like a really great educational process, I think, when I was first onboarded, that has really helped. And I think it made the adjustment really smooth at HCD.
That's awesome. So going into that a little bit more, what is your role? So we've obviously seen you progress from being not just a very exciting intern and a very eager intern to going to being an analyst. And now you guys are both research managers. What are the roles that you typically have as a research manager?
Yeah, so I can start off, and of course, Rachel, add on, but we do have a number of different hats. We do interact with clients. So once we are awarded a project, we do a lot of the communication with them in terms of developing the survey, discussion guide, methodology, whatever it might be for the research. We do, of course, have to ensure that research runs smoothly. So when we were, pre-pandemic traveling, we would obviously go to research in person a lot of times to oversee that. And again, liaison with clients as needed to ensure everything was running smoothly. Of course, we still do that now, but
right.
Remotely.
Yeah, exactly. In new ways.
Yes, exactly. So, a lot of client work, but then of course, we're working very closely with the data as well. So once the data is collected, we work to analyze it. However, we, decided, for our analysis plan, whether it be using SPSS, if it's numbers, or, different things with biometrics and so forth. So taking all the components of the research and all the data and putting it together to present it in a concise, clear way for the client to understand. So then kind of going back to the client and presenting those results to them, and making sure that they get, enough from the data for them to make it, a good story for them, so that they can actually take what we found and apply it. So I think overall, a lot of it is, a mix of client and then the actual project and like number-based work.
Right. And Rachel, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
I think you covered most of it, but I guess generally the idea is we're really following along for that entire process. So from the very beginning, whenever we have our kickoff calls with clients and working on developing screeners and things like that, all the way till the very end when we're presenting that report, bring any questions on the research, adding any follow-ups that the client may have, things like that. So we really follow along on our research projects from start to finish to ensure that we're delivering quality work along the full research journey.
I think that's a great point to bring up, that there's constant communication with the client. And not only that, but you build a rapport with them. You start to have a relationship with these clients because each person, each client is interested in different things, and each research question that they have is different. So by building that rapport with them, you're able to better meet their needs and, really get at what they're interested in their research while they're, exploring different avenues. So with that, you kind of walked through a bit of the roles that you have, but what skills do you need to back those roles?
I would say, so some things in particular, definitely a strong math or statistics background is definitely something that I think we needed moving into this role, because that's a lot of our quant work involves things like that. I think also the ability to kind of take a whole bunch of data and put it together and use all of that data to tell one cohesive story and make recommendations for our client based on that. I think that's definitely very important as well. Carolyn, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think, the most of it, we do use different programs. So being able to use those and learn them for our analysis purposes. And then of course, the communication skills that, I was able to continually develop, and I still am with clients and so forth. So to Rachel's point, definitely a lot of math skills are necessary for the analysis portion for sure.
I think it's a great point to bring up that, and one of the most underrated, in my opinion, is that you are building a story. And really, because when you have all this data, it's great when you have it and numbers are really helpful, but you want to have really strong data visualizations to back that up and build a story so that they know, okay, what do all these numbers actually mean? Are they significant? What conditions do we look at in our research that are actually telling us something? And that's a really big part of what your roles are. So it's definitely something that shouldn't be understated in any way. I think that's one of the most valuable, and just from my perspective, I think it's also one of the most fun parts, because it lets you think outside the box a bit and start to really question the research and say, okay, let's dive deeper into this and see what insights we can actually find. But with that being said, did you think that was going to be part of the role? So analytics, people typically think math, they think number crunching and things like that. So was there anything that you were surprised about now that you're in the role compared to when you first started?
I would say, I think so. Amanda was the one that had hired me and brought me on. I think she did a pretty good job at kind of explaining what the roles, what my role would be and all the different components that go into that. So I think she had said something along the lines of you'll be responsible for doing the analysis, but also following things along from start to finish and working on reporting and putting that story together. So I would say that was something that I had expected going into it, but I think something that was a bit more surprising to me was how much overlap I saw in the kinds of things that we were doing with the kinds of theoretical things that I had learned in college and some of that background that I had.
I agree. It's definitely, HCD is, we do base everything in validated research. So there is this level of an educational component where we're all still learning constantly and learning from each other. That's to Carolyn's point of working at a smaller size company. We really do have the opportunity to talk to different people at the company, and everybody's willing to chat with one another. There's things that I've learned from some of our coders that I would have never had the opportunity to do if I was at a bigger company and we were all in different silos. So there is a lot to be said to that, as well as, we have the opportunity to communicate with each other much more easily and fluidly because we are, in touch with each other constantly.
Oh, absolutely. I love that about the HCD for sure. But I guess in terms of surprising parts for me, of course, I was an intern, so I definitely had a very good understanding of what to expect when I was onboarded full time. But I guess one thing that sticks out to me is this one project when I first started, I we're doing a biometric project and we wanted to do a survey, a follow-up survey after, and we didn't have a moderator. That canceled last minute. So I ended up asking a few questions, which is something I never thought I would do, talking to strangers. But that was definitely something that stuck out to me, that I was, surprised, but it was a great experience. And I'm happy that, I value it, and I'm happy that I got to actually do that, and it worked out. So that's definitely one little surprising experience that I had at HCD. That was definitely actually really fun.
Yeah, I think moderating too, it's a different beast, honestly, because you have to have your analytics mind on, but at the same time, you're also participant facing at this point. So you want to make sure that they're comfortable and you're not adding any sort of additional bias to it. So people, from a surface level, you would think, okay, you're just asking a bunch of questions, but there's so much more that goes into moderating that it's a tough gig to do. So it's impressive you were able to, just jump right into it and get it done. But, and then, just another question really quickly before we move on to a story time. Do you have any, I guess, Carolyn, I'll keep going with you. What are your favorite parts about working with the analytics team, and like what challenges do you find yourself learning from as you work with analytics?
Yeah, of course. So, going back to that small company idea that we've been talking about a bit, I love that our team is small so that we really are so involved with each other, and we're very much of a supportive group working together. We touch base multiple times every week to make sure that, we're getting our work done, and we have, a nice schedule, and that, we meet our client deadlines and all of that. So I think that working analytics, having each other to bounce off of ideas, to, check our work, to say, hey, I need some advice. I haven't done this type of project in a while. Or, hey, have you guys, used this platform before? Our client wants to use it. What's your experiences? So just really kind of having that network sharing type of vibe within the analytics department is really awesome. Something I really value for sure. In terms of challenges, I think it kind of goes hand in hand. Yes, we are small, which is great for communication, but of course, there's only so much a few people can do within the department. So of course, making sure that within that schedule, we are sticking to the deadlines, of course, is really important, since it is a small department. We have to stick to it, or else we wouldn't be making our client deadlines.
Right. And also making time for fun things, like having our happy hours is it's just as important, to be able to chat with everybody and talk about ways that we can, even things out of the office, talk about the weather or something. It's very helpful to get through the day when you, have a person behind your coworkers and a personality behind your coworkers to get along with. But actually moving forward, I'm curious, Rachel, can you share a little bit about what it's like to work with a client, and, just from start to finish, give us a brief overview of your inside scoop with the interactions you've had?
Yeah, sure. So I think I kind of touched on this a little bit before, but usually our first interaction with a client will be during a kickoff call. So we'll usually have a call at the very beginning of our research to kind of talk through, okay, these are the goals that we're looking to meet with this research. These are the specific questions that the client may have, really communicating with them and trying to understand exactly what they're looking to find out with that research. That we can then take that information and start developing some of our materials. So if it's quant research, developing a screener and a survey based off of that. We're usually in close contact with our clients as well while we're doing that. So we'll often have calls to kind of discuss the documents, make sure that we're hitting on the specific questions that they have. If it's qual, it's working on developing a discussion guide for our moderators. And also working with our moderators as well to ensure that they understand the research goals and really know how to ask the questions that we're looking to find out, and how to really dig deeper and get as much information as possible. So while we're doing that, we're constantly in contact with our clients, and while we're developing those materials. Once we get approval on those, where for quant, we'll be working on our programmers would be working on programming the survey at that point. And then we will usually test through that survey as well to make sure that everything looks okay, the logic is correct, and everything kind of makes sense to the respondent as they're going through. And then at that point, we would start actually fielding the research. So if it's quant, we would reach out to our partners who do our fielding for us and get respondents for us. If it's qual, we would be typically outside of pandemic times going in person for that research, and watching the research and taking notes while that's happening. We're doing a lot of online qual right well. So in that case, we'd be watching from home, notes on that information.
And where in this do you start to set the expectations? Because I do believe that's part of the communications, a really big part of your communications is making sure that they're aware of what they can expect.
Yeah, so we usually, that's usually from the very beginning of the research. And a lot of times when our salespeople are working to develop proposals for our research projects, that a lot of the times they do include some examples of what output may look like. So oftentimes it's actually in the proposal, we give them some information of what they can expect to get out of it. But on top of that, as I was speaking about earlier, we're constantly having conversations with them while we're developing the materials. So in those conversations, we are very clear on what kinds of things they can expect to get out of the research based on the things that we're asking.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, of course, we're always transparent throughout the whole process. We like to be very, open and communicative with our clients. So, even during research, in qual, say we want to adjust questions or things like that, or, something changes and we have to, shift over, based on what the client wants. So we're always just making sure we're transparent throughout. And, if things do change, we'd always make sure to caveat if there's something we're concerned about, by changing the research in any way.
Right. That makes sense. And, things happen throughout the discussions that you have where maybe their initial question that they had evolves over time or something happens where they decide that they want to go in a different direction. And it's really great that you have that communication and you have those discussions so that way the end result is what they want. Because if your initial discussions don't really match up what their end goals are, then, it kind of brings into question, why did we do this research? So having that communication and having a setting where you can go back and forth and continuously update and check in is crucial for this to be actually successful.
Absolutely.
Great. So one last question I do want to pose to both of you is the idea of what advice you would give to someone that's interested in learning about analytics and market research. Are there any podcasts that you listen to? Is there any, courses, like I said earlier, that you would recommend, or even just skills that you could touch on now? Rachel, do you want to start it up?
Yeah, so one of the things I'd recommend, first of all, is checking out some of our other vidcasts and some of our, we do a lot of webinars as well. Yeah, we do a lot of webinars as well, which I think are really informative. I think on top of that, if someone is currently in college and looking for what courses to take, I would definitely recommend taking as many research-based classes as you can. As well as statistics-based research classes in order to learn how to analyze things for quant. So I think specifically taking our marketing research class would definitely be really helpful. Consumer behavior as well. When I was in college, I tried to take as many research-related classes as I possibly could.
That was smart.
Yeah. So I think that definitely helped me out in starting my role at HCD.
That's awesome. And Carolyn, if you have maybe somebody that is pivoting into it from a different industry or something like that, what would you recommend or share with them? Or even what would you tell your former self?
Yeah, so within market research, of course, it's very broad and there's all different types of research. So I think that, having an interest is great, but, having the ability to explore online and look into, different companies or webinars or, online, of course, right now, any kind of just any information and research that you can do on your own would be really helpful to just kind of understand the different opportunities within market research itself, to understand, what you're most interested within market research, because it is broad and there's different types, right? So I think that that's really important and a good foundational step into getting situated. If you are trying to pivot, of course, you want to pivot in the right direction.
Of course. And when you're, do you have any skills or anything like that you'd recommend? I know you had mentioned SPSS would be really a useful tool for you to have under your belt. Is there any other recommendations that you'd give to someone that's exploring it?
Yeah, I think SPSS is definitely a great tool to know, MaxDiff, IAT, SAM, just kind of researching the general most popular types of research tools if you have the ability to do so. I think also, hopefully, I would think most people now are very familiar with, different Microsoft
Right. I think Excel,
programs.
it
So
makes such a
Excel,
difference.
PowerPoint, yeah. So a lot of those formulas and stuff like that, we also find ourselves using as well. So I think those courses are pretty accessible online if you do want to kind of upgrade your Excel skills. I think that's definitely a good step as well.
That's awesome. Thank you guys both so much for that advice. I do think that it's useful, and I'm in my master's program right now, so I actually know of a lot of people that are interested in being an analyst, and I think that they would agree with you that those are really useful skills and tools that can help you better transition into it if you're interested. So I just want to, like Rachel had mentioned before, to mention that everyone should check out the vidcasts if you haven't already. Our Mindset vidcasts are on our YouTube page as well as all of our webinars. So please click and subscribe if you are willing and happy and interested to. We'd be more than happy to have you. And we put out new content all the time, not just on our YouTube page, but also on our LinkedIn. So be sure to check us out on there. Without further ado, I really want to thank you both for joining us today. And I hope that you come back on the vidcast and, share a little bit more tips and tricks as we go on in this ever-changing market research world.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully we hear back from you soon. Take care.